the region of interest, except when it happens on the femoral neck. But it's really hard to say, like when you get this error, that you can blame only one side and not the other. But my belief is that it's actually at the verges of this DIC cloud that you get normally the highest errors. Which level of strain? Is it high strain or they get high. So you get these peak strains. So I think it's quite small, but you can see like at the border, you have these small red points with like super high strains. And well, in a way, we felt I couldn't just remove them because like if you look at the correlation, it's high and everything works, but I kind of doubt that all around this cloud there is always, irrespective of how big you make this cloud, you still have these peak strains at the border.
Yes, please, over there.
Thank you for a nice presentation. I just want to say or ask, if I understood correctly, your finite element models where there was mapped the material properties from CT data. Well, and do you use some special software which you programmed, or do you have some normal software which is on the market?
So we use BoneMat, which is freely available on the web now. That's a software that has been developed at Rizzoli Orthopedic Institute in Italy. And now if you Google BoneMat, you can download it. And there is actually, I think, a Python implementation, if you use Abacus, that you can use, and it does just the same. Plus, I mean, now in-house, we also have a MATLAB code that does the same. But it's based on BoneMat, so you can download it on the web.
Any more question? Yes, Dieter? Yeah.
Thank you. I have to follow my previous colleagues that it's really impressive. So that you did really lots of work in a quite short time. And as a comment from my side, I think you showed up where we can look at in future. But I still have the feeling like this digital volume commemoration, how you did this validation with the FE model, you don't have the cortex in there, you have a simplified material law, and. I think there's lots of stuff left where we have to look again and where we have to look closer to really understand all these things. As you said, we need more data, we need more femurs, and we have to dig more into this topic to be sure that this validation really holds, what we are doing here with this image correlation. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I basically agree. In a way, I mean, thank that there is some more work to do on this, because that might ensure me some chance to keep working on that. So yeah, I agree. We are actually aiming at doing that. So a first thing we are planning to do is to implement some crack propagation, so having some more sophisticated way to predict the fracture at first. And yeah, I also do believe that implementing the separation between cortical and trabecular bone with different mapping, especially when it comes to the mapping at the surface, might give some extra improvement. Because we performed experiments with strain gauges a while ago, while I was still in Bologna, and we saw that, for example, like when you just have those few measurements, you see, for example, the strain gauge in the lateral part of the neck, that was always off by a certain factor. And like, irrespective of how good you fit, in certain regions you have issues. So I believe that, for example, if you implement cortical bone properly and fix the partial volume effect, that might bring those strain gauges back in the line. So that's definitely a way to improve it.
I also joined the line and congratulate for the work. I'm repeating what has been said earlier because that's just true, it's amazing. You mentioned in between your talk that you think it's appropriate to have sums of different populations. So for men, for women, my question would be why? What would be the benefit over having one that covers, you know, bigger parts of the population throughout worldwide? So would it be an effort to have actually a large one, or is it really beneficial to have separate?
So to be honest, I cannot really answer that question. My knowledge of the sum is limited in that respect. So I don't really know if we should make a big sum or different sums. That's something I should simply try. The thing is that at the moment we had 35, 40-ish femoral anatomies, and that was not a lot. So the priority there is to increase. And then once you have more male, more females, more subjects, then I mean, generating this sum is quite fast. So creating a sum for this subset, and another subset, it's quite fast exercise, so you can go and reconstruct the three of them and figure that out. My guess is that it won't change much, but it might be worth a try.
Any more questions? Well, I have two small questions. The first question is, so you mentioned and the partial volume effects, and you also mentioned that as soon as you detect an element which is compromised, then you consider that you have catastrophic propagation of fracture. So my question is whether you have thoroughly checked the mesh convergence, the local mesh convergence of your model.
Yes, so we did. We actually did limit it to the strain prediction. So we didn't do mesh convergence also for the fracture propagation. Of course, that method is mesh dependent. There is no much discussion about that. And pretty much all the method goes on the same line. They have this mesh dependency. Then you can compensate for that. Like there is a study done by Enrico Schileo, for example, in Bologna, where they take this measurement and they average over a 3 millimeter square area, which is sort of a way of compensating for that. But as long as you use this type of approach, you will be mesh dependent. And that's why we were thinking that implementing some extended finite element approach instead, where you have the crack propagation, might mitigate this problem of the mesh dependency. But there, irrespective of how small you have your elements, you will have mesh dependency. Because if you have too small, then you end up with this partial volume effect to have a very tiny element which is totally outside the volume of the bone. That's very weak, and that fractures at a very small load. So you have to live with that mesh dependency until I think you go to some more sophisticated way of predicting the crack propagation.
Yeah, I think especially in those cases where the fracture may initiate in the trabecular bone.
Yes.
That might be super critical. Any more questions? No? Okay, so I guess you had a lot of questions. It was kind of second defense of thesis. So thank you very much. And so thank you all for attending this session.